Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Ground Up Show. I'm your host, Matt Diavella, and today we have a very special podcast. One of my favorite topics to cover, habit change, making drastic changes in your life that actually stick. And before we get to that podcast, I've got an announcement on a similar thread. So I'm actually in the process of developing and producing a course. It's a 3-week course on habit change. So if you have ever had trouble starting new things, building a new workout routine, or developing a healthy lifestyle, if you find yourself starting, whether it be at the start of the new year or otherwise, and within a couple weeks completely quitting, I know how you feel. I've been there myself. And I've learned a lot about how to make these habits stick over the long run. So I'm packing everything I've learned and even the lessons that I've gotten on this podcast into a 3-week course. And that's going to be done in about a month. So if you want to get access to this course, head over to mattdiavella.com/newsletter, and I will follow up with you as soon as it's ready. The podcast today is with the brilliant Nate Green. He's a fitness expert and author that advocates a simple approach to well-being. So we break down what it takes to make lasting changes in your life, how a degree isn't necessary if you have experience and connections, Parato's 80-20 principle, and why focusing on the tiny hacks and the tweaks will actually prevent you from starting in the first place. All right, let's get right into this podcast. I think you're going to love it. This is Nate Green. I'm interested in understanding, how do people connect the dots between knowledge and action? So many of us know what to do. Yes. We know the right diet to be eating. Yes. We know that this shit that we're putting in our mouths is not good for us, but we still can't make a change. So how do we connect those dots, and how have you seen those transformations happening?
This is really interesting because I've spent a lot of time, I'd say about the last 6 years, working with a nutrition company called Precision Nutrition. And the biggest thing that we teach, and it has nothing to do with health and fitness, but it's all behavioral psychology, right? So it's how do you take complex things like getting in shape. You may not think it's complex, right? It's like, oh, eat less food and work out more. But those are like complex behavioral like modifications you need to make in order to actually accomplish that goal. So we've spent a lot of time and a lot of research looking into how do people change. And so for me, in terms of like taking knowledge and transferring it into action, it is a couple of principles. And the one that pops into my mind right now is, how can you shrink the change? How can you make it really easy? Like to the point where you're like, this is like too easy. Like when we work with a new client and they have a new habit, and the habit is to, let's say, go to the gym 3 times a week. And that's just what they're going to do. They're going to go to the gym 3 times per week. A good coach or someone that knows behavioral change, what they'll do is they'll shrink that change, especially if it's something new to the client, right? So instead of going to the gym 3 times per week, we'll ask them a question like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that you can actually go to the gym 3 times a week? Like, think about your schedule, think about what you have going on, look at the next week. How confident are you that you can go to the gym 3 times a week? And if the client answers anything less than a 7 or less, like 1, not confident, 10, very confident, if it's a 7 or less, we shrink it. How about 2 days a week? 7. How about 1 day a week? Well, I could do that. That's like fucking easy. Anyone can go to the gym 1 day a week. And that's the habit that we start with. And that's the only thing that we measure for a couple of weeks or a month. Are you consistently going to the gym and doing this one workout 1 day per week? And it seems like such a small change. But for someone who's never really worked out before, if they consistently go to the gym 1 day a week, that's 52 workouts in a year when they may have done 0 beforehand. So the way that I look at like behavioral change and like turning knowledge into action is like, what are just the basics that I need to know about this? What's the skill set that I need to know? How do I break those skills down into smaller practices? And then how can I make it so easy that it's almost embarrassing? Like I'm like anyone can do that. I can definitely eat one vegetable per day or whatever it is, right? And then those habits just build on one another because you get some momentum going. So that's what I try to do in my life too. If I'm trying to work on something new, like a new writing project, instead of saying I'm going to go write a book right now, I go, okay, can I just spend an hour on an outline? I can do an hour. I don't want to do an hour. I'll do half an hour. I'll do 5 minutes of something. So I'm consistently looking at things and figuring out how to make it like the smallest possible thing that is laughably, stupidly easy, and then just starting with that.
The most challenging thing about that, I think, is that it goes against human intuition.
Oh, yeah.
Like we get so inspired in these moments.
Yes.
You know what I mean? We listen to a Tony Robbins audio tape, or we get motivated by a Will Smith YouTube video
About running on the treadmill.
Yeah, and you're like, I'm going to change my life. This is it. Like,
Yes.
I feel so fired up.
Yeah.
Everything. I'm going to change my diet. I'm going to go, start exercising, running, going to the gym 5-6 days a week, and then it usually doesn't last 2-3 days.
No,
and
absolutely.
then people fall off.
Well, and so that's the thing that we discovered, not just with my work with this one company that does health and fitness coaching, but in everything. Like, we have this big I'm going to change everything in my life moment, and it usually lasts, like especially with health and fitness, a couple of weeks. People will kill it for a couple of weeks. They're like eating more protein, and they're like, or they go vegetarian or whatever the thing is they're going to do. They go to the gym, and it lasts 2 to 3 weeks, and then life gets in the way. And so suddenly they wake up late and their whole day is shot, right? And what we found is if you take a long-term view, like this is your life, like hopefully you live to be a long time, right? You're not going to change anything overnight. And so if it's really important for you to like develop a new skill set or start a new career or get in better shape or whatever this like big life goal is that you have, it makes sense to plan for it. And like, it's not sexy to say it, but like over the next few years, the next couple of decades, right? So it's not the fun thing to do, but it is the consistent thing to do. And then once the consistency builds up a little bit and you have more and more repetitions, like you just get your reps in, it's like a fitness analogy. Like you just got to get your reps in, just got to do more and more and more. It doesn't mean like you just keep progressively adding more to it if you can't handle it. It just means you're just doing the minimum every day. And over time, that builds up into this thing where your life is totally different than it was 2 years ago. And it feels like nothing much has changed, but at the same time, everything has fucking changed. Here's
where I think that strategy would be difficult for me. I feel like once a week, it's hard to keep track of that, right? And like, it's so spread out that if I'm working out and then 6 days of rest and then I'm working out, I feel like within those 6 days, it's easier for me to give up on the next week. So how do you keep people on track?
Yeah, this is the thing. So like all of these are principles, right? Like make the change easier, shrink the change. We got that from a book called Switch by the Heath brothers. They wrote like Made to Stick, like all these self-development books that are like super popular. That's when you take the principle, but then you have to apply it to the individual. Because if I was coaching you and you told me that, we would come up with a new habit. I'm not dogmatic saying, Matt, I'm going to make you work out, or I'm going to ask you to work out 1 day a week. If you're like, no, I think I can do 2 days or 3 days or 4 days or whatever, we'll find a thing that works for you. And then we'll just scale it every day or every week. Like I'd check in with you every week and be like, hey, like what do you have on the docket this week? Let's look at your schedule. How confident are you can go to the gym 3 days this week? And you're like, actually, I can do 5 days a week because I have nothing going on this week. Like I'm in between projects or whatever. So we do 5 days. Or you're like, man, I'm traveling soon. I can't make it work. I'm like, okay, here's a hotel room workout and let's go to the gym 1 day a week while you're here. So it's all individual at that point. And it's like taking your life into consideration. So that's what working with a coach really is, right? You're like, whether it's a business coach or a fitness coach or whatever, you're just working with someone who, if they know what they're doing, they ask lots of questions, they get you to solve your own problems for yourself, and then commit to things that you feel completely confident that you can do, as opposed to me just telling you, here's a bunch of shit to do, and it'll work for you if you do it all, which is how most people approach building a business or getting in shape. I need to eat all these kinds of foods, go to the gym this many times per week, get this many hours of sleep. And what a good coach does is they know all of the principles that lead to good results, and they just selectively pick the ones that work for you in your life, and then they just have this dialogue where we work on it together. It's a co-created process. It's not like top-down information coming at you. It's, I have expertise, you as a client have your life and your own expertise. Like, you're an expert on yourself way more than I am. And so I'm going to help you get to where you need to be by just talking with you through it, and then scaling habits and small changes depending on what you have going on.
Yeah, I feel like my experience with personal trainers, and it's not been very much. I've only worked with one or two. I do the free sessions at the gym whenever they give me one. I'm like, I guess I'll give it a shot. I'll try it.
Oh, those are the worst trainers too.
Yeah, it's the thing though, because like my experience with it is like, I don't see them taking behavioral change into account. They don't ask questions about like your life and how busy you are at work and when you have free time. They're just like, can we schedule a session this week?
Yeah. And why would they at that point though, right? Because like, you haven't committed to them and they haven't committed to you. Like, they can give you a workout. They're trying to, like, in that situation, if you haven't made some kind of commitment, if you haven't got bought in some way, there's no reason for either of you to take it that seriously. And so like, when I do some business coaching sometimes with people, and the first thing I work on is like, you've heard of the term pay to play, right? I'll tell you a quick story. When I first met Joshua and Ryan, our mutual friends, the minimalists, I was living in Missoula, Montana at the time, and I didn't know either of them. And Ryan had a mentorship program, and it was like a couple $100 a session to talk to Ryan about whatever. And I didn't even have a goal. I was like, this seems like a good person to meet, and we're in the same community, and we have, I think we have similar interests and principles that we share. It'd be cool to meet him. So I paid him $200 or whatever his hourly rate was to like sit across from him and have pizza and just talk about things. And it was really valuable because I made a connection with a person, but I wouldn't have had that if I didn't invest in that in some way. And that investment just happened to be money. It doesn't always have to be money. It could be time or attention or shared interest. But I feel like the same kind of thing with the trainer. If you're going into a gym and you're doing the free session, there's like no consequences whatsoever for you or for that trainer to even invest a modicum of your like time and energy into the relationship. And so things only really start to happen when you commit and put your money where your mouth is. Like, I've talked about the coaching program at Precision Nutrition a little bit, but one thing that we do is you can pay monthly, or we have this thing where you can just pay us all up front. Pay it all up front. It's a full year coaching program, and you're not going to get your money back unless you do the things that we tell you to do. Now, of course, if like you really like if it wasn't a good fit for you, we give you your money back. But the idea is, let's say you're all in at the beginning. Like, you're going to trust us to help you out, and we're going to trust you to actually take this seriously and make it a part of your life. And things are going to come up that are going to be difficult, but we're going to work through them together, and we're going to co-create this new change that you want to make. And a year from now, things are going to be better than ever. That's our plan. But you only get there when you commit to something. Right.
Yeah, and I think that connects into that psychology of people in the very beginning. They're just like, I'm all in. Like, all right, well then put your money where your mouth is. Yeah. Like, really take this seriously.
Exactly.
And go all in.
Exactly. And again, it doesn't have to be money, right? I just use that as an example, but it could be time and attention. Like, I'm going to dedicate a couple hours a week to working on this side hustle that I eventually want to turn into a business. Like, that's a commitment, but it's not a commitment if it's not in your calendar and you actually don't take time to do it. Right.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that that I try to find out in my own life is like, if I want to accomplish a thing, how am I committing myself to it? Before we started recording, we were talking about the idea of small tests, and that's something that I've been trying to adopt a lot more in my life. And to the point where if I have an idea of starting a new project or work with a new client or anything like that, I ask myself, okay, what is a small test I can run to even see if this is a good thing that would be worth doing? You know what I mean? That way, like for instance, I was talking to a reader of mine who reads my blog, and he was asking me whether he should go to school for like personal training. He wanted to wonder if he wanted an exercise physiology degree, or if he should get a nutrition degree or whatever. And I said, before you go to school and spend however much money for however many years doing this thing that you're not even sure that you will actually enjoy, how about you just go train a friend for like a month and just see if you like talking to this person and having to answer questions. Like, what's a small test that you can do that doesn't cost a lot of time and money? You're committing to it, but you're not overly committing to it. And you can just run it and see, yeah, I think this feels like a good thing for me. I think I would like this kind of career. I would like this project. I would like to work with this person. I mean, you're kind of like dating, right? You're like doing these little small tests to see how it's going to go. And then if it goes well, then you fucking double down and you commit to it. But if it doesn't go well, it's like, oh, you didn't waste so much time or money. It's fine. Like,
yeah,
you move on.
Yeah, I just had a friend who did something very similar where she quit her job. She was like very successful VP working in Manhattan. And it just, I think the grind got to her a little bit. And she's like, I'm not happy about this anymore. She quit her job, traveled the country for a couple months, came back to New York and started a sandwich shop. And it wasn't like she didn't open up like a mom and pop actual store. She reached out to a couple places that they would do these like food markets or vendors or whatever where you can show up, kind of like it's called a Smorgasburg, I think.
Awesome.
And yeah, it's really, really cool. And so she applies to one of these things. And they say, yeah, great. Can you send us some photos of your food? And like she hadn't even started. She had done nothing. So she went online and found some photos of food that she really liked, like sandwiches. And she sent it to them. And they said, okay, great. Yeah, here's your table. And then she's like, oh, okay, I'm going to do this now. And like she wasn't like necessarily passionate about making sandwiches, but she wanted to figure out if she could pursue this kind of like independent hustle, like creating your own product and brand, and like if she would actually enjoy that. So she made these sandwiches. It was really successful. She really enjoyed it. Not sure if she's going to be, making a sandwich shop, but she now knows that she's like really enjoyed that process.
That's super cool.
And it's like, I mean, there's so many things like that you could do that there's really, you're not going to fail.
No, well, there is no failure at that point, right? You just like failure to me would be like committing to something at the outset without even being sure if it's a thing that you want to commit to or if it's worth committing to. So like if your friend went and took out $75,000 in loans in order to open up a business on like a busy corner in Brooklyn, that's very different than doing a sandwich shop at a pop-up for like, a month or two or however long like the contract is or the gig is. So that's just something that I encourage people to do, and something that I try to do myself is if I think I want to do something, like, and it could be something like, I mean, I haven't skateboarded since I was like a kid, and I wanted to get back into it. And so my girlfriend got me this skateboard lesson with like this punk 17-year-old kid. He was like teaching me how to like kickflip and stuff. It was awesome though. But that was like the small test. Like, and I didn't even have like a skateboard anymore. So I just went and like borrowed his board and like did this 1-hour session. And it was a small test. And I'm like, you know what? I like skateboarding, but I don't want to get my own board anymore because I just like hurt my ankles all the time. So it was like that 1 hour was a small test before I went out and like bought knee pads and like a brand new skateboard and like went and signed up for like this, like an indoor like skating area or whatever. Like I could have done all of that and spent $1,000 and a bunch of my time and then felt like a failure afterward when I didn't go to the fucking skate park. Instead, I did a 1-hour class, paid the 17-year-old kid to teach me some stuff, and realized that I had a lot of fun, but I'm probably not going to do it that much more.
Yeah, and I think that there is like a psychological effect in the long term if we keep trying things, like not experiments, but actually like going all in. I'm going to get all the ski gear and I'm going to, the jacket and everything. And then you have just these closets filled with all these failed ventures. And like, I think it just weighs on you a little bit. But if you were to just approach the way you look at it a little bit differently, and you saw them as experiments, it's just not going to weigh on you, and you can actually enjoy the process.
Yeah, and you don't know what you don't know. Meaning, like, you may like think you really want to do a thing. Like some people want to be entrepreneurs, and they learn about it and they start a little side hustle and they try to make a little bit of money, and they realize that they actually like working for other people. They like working as part of a team, right? Like they like, when I say like employee, I don't mean that in a negative way, because I mean, I don't even know if I consider myself an entrepreneur at this point. Like I basically plug into existing teams and I just become a part of that team for a while, and I help them grow the business and do things, but then I can unplug. So I guess it's kind of like freelancing, but I don't know. It gets to the point where like, if you don't do a small test, you're just committing yourself to something that is completely unknown. And then, like you said, when you fail at that a year later, or you just don't go skiing even though you have all the gear, you do feel like a failure. You're like, man, I'm kind of like, I just wasted a bunch of money, and I'm wasting, like, I just feel like I feel bad about myself. But if you structure it as a small test, there is no feeling bad about yourself. It's like, oh no, that's just all data. That didn't work, or I don't like that as much as I thought I would like it, you know?
You are a reformed skinny kid.
Yeah.
Is that right? I am also a reformed skinny kid.
Awesome.
I think we both gained like 30 to 40 pounds in college. Is that when you gained your weight?
No, I didn't go to college. I was not good at school. So it was my junior and senior year of high school. I gained 40 pounds, and that would, like, the weight room became like my like church at the time.
Right.
Like, that's all I did.
Yeah, I had trouble in high school. I couldn't put on any weight. I was like, I was 100 pounds going into high school, and then I think I left high school maybe 115 pounds. Like, that's when you're supposed to be putting on a lot more weight than that.
Yeah.
Like, all my friends were 150, 160 pounds.
Yeah.
Like, not muscle, but still, I was always the smallest kid in school. And then for whatever reason, at some point in college, things started to click. My roommate was big into the gym, so I think that helped to inspire me.
Absolutely.
And he gave me a lot of advice, because early on I had no idea what I was doing. I was just picking up weights. I would do one set, put weights down, pick up the next weights, and just start going into my next set. And he's like, dude, you're not even resting. And I was like, what's rest? I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah.
But I'm really curious to learn about your journey and how you were able to actually make that shift, especially so young.
I've always kind of been athletic-ish. Like, I started like doing martial arts, like taekwondo, when I was like 5 years old. My parents put me in taekwondo, and I loved it. And I always played like basketball, and I would do push-ups and jump rope and stuff. So I was always kind of been athletic, but I was really skinny. I was like, I mean, depends on what you mean by skinny, right? It's all contextual. So I was like 135 pounds or so, 140 pounds, which for me was skinny. And I ended up gaining 40 pounds. I went to like 175 over the course of a year. And what that showed me, like, I can tell you how I did it, but the results, like the consequences of gaining that weight, I was at a time where I was like 16, 17 years old. I wasn't very good at school. I had a couple of good close friends, but I wasn't like super popular talking to everybody, right? And what gaining that weight did, and the fact that I did it to myself, it gave me this whole new sense of confidence. Like, I could accomplish things. I could like take something that was non-optimal or shitty or whatever you want to say, or like just, not where I wanted it to be, and I could actually affect change and make something happen. And that blew my whole world open, because that was like 17 at the time. And in high school, I had like I graduated with a 1.7 GPA. I just did not really try. And my parents still don't believe me at this point, but I never took like the SATs. I didn't even know that was a thing you had to do. College was not even an issue for me. Like, we didn't even talk about it. My parents were great parents, but they just had their own shit going on, right? But when I gained that weight, just this whole world of possibilities opened up to me, and I'm like, all right, if I can do this to my body, what else can I do like with my life? And that's when I started getting really into like self-development stuff and entrepreneurship and writing. But the way that I gained the weight, I mean, at that point I was like 17, man. Like, just the hormones were going. Like, it was I mean, I'm not gonna say it was easy, but like, for me, I can tell you a lot of terrible stories about how to take like shot glasses full of olive oil just to like
man,
eat cans of chili and like 3 peanut butter sandwiches at like 10 p.m. Like, I took it seriously, like it was a job. Like, I had to like, it's not popular to say, but like, because most people are trying to lose weight, and when you're losing weight, you need to be aware of what you're eating, and you need to like have some hunger cues, and I need to stop now. And for when you're trying to gain weight, you need to do the exact opposite of all of that. Like, I would like set a timer and like play loud music and just like eat food as fast as possible before my hunger cues kicked in.
Right. And
then I would feel full, and then I would still eat more food. I do not necessarily recommend this, but that's just how that's how I had to gain weight. And at 17, I didn't like, I read articles online, but I didn't have like a coach or a mentor guiding me through it. So I just like hacked my way through it.
Yeah, and well, I mean, like you said, it's not that popular because most people are trying to lose weight, but like that's such an underserved group of people. Like especially guys that are skinny that are trying to put on weight and mass, and it's pretty difficult.
Yes.
It's pretty challenging. I mean, it's like we spoke about earlier, just picking up any kind of thing. But I definitely have a couple friends who struggle with that, who have for a long time. They're like, I'm drinking all these protein shakes, I'm trying this and that, and like nothing's working. And it's like, you gotta eat a lot. Like you gotta eat until it hurts. Yeah,
it's people like, and like you said, it's a very small subset of people, right? And it's weird. I've kind of like started my career, especially in the early days, like talking directly to those kinds of people. Like I was a program director for a few years of an online workout and nutrition program called Scrawny to Brawny. And we just took like thousands of guys who were incredibly intelligent, really, really smart people, but they'd been trying to gain weight, but they just didn't know how. And so I have like a soft spot for helping people like that, because like that's where I came from, right? I just needed I needed a good tribe of people. I needed some good mentors around me, and I needed someone to like tell me what to do to get in better shape. And when I went through that transition and gained 40 pounds, like this is not the same stuff that I would do today, right? Like now I feel like I'm at a better place with my body or whatever, and I'm not a 17-year-old kid anymore. Right. So I'm not taking shots of olive oil anymore. But at that stage of my life, it's just what I had to do. And I feel like that's true with everything, right? Like you probably, trying to think about this now, like I think I hustled a lot more when I was like early on in my career. Not saying that I don't hustle now and like try to do like the best work that I'm capable of and push myself to become better and to reach more people. But I don't like have the same, like I have drive, but it's more like a discerning drive at this point. Like it's not like try to make as much money as possible. Like back then it was try to gain as much weight as possible. I feel like I'm a little bit more strategic with my thinking now.
Yeah, I felt the same way too about the weight gaining. It was like you could never be big enough, and it wasn't as necessarily having a balanced life or a balanced diet.
No. It's interesting. Like I was talking to a friend and mentor of mine, a guy named John Berardi, and he has this like he had this like blog post that he put up a while ago, and said like in your career, the first part of it, you need to say yes to everything. Like everything is a yes, because you have no experience and you have no connections or very limited, and you need to put yourself out there and try a bunch of different things. It goes back to like our small tests or small experiments. And then as you get a little bit more accomplished in your career, you build a skill set, you have some experience, you're doing good work, you get to this point where maybe like half the time you say yes and half the time you say no. You have to be more discerning about it, right? And I mean, I think you get to this point eventually where you are top in your class, or like you're good at your craft, like you're respected for it, and you have like a track record of like past accomplishments and experience that speak for themselves. And then you're in a point where you have to say no to most things, and it's a really tough transition, but it's just you still have the same drive, but you have to be more discerning with the things that you take on and the things you commit yourself to. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I had the same trajectory as well. I remember saying yes to every single project, every single video shoot. Like I did 65-year-old birthday parties and bar mitzvah intro videos. I don't know if you've heard of this.
I don't even know what a bar mitzvah intro video is.
Oh yeah, it's a thing. I cornered the market on the East Coast. But basically it was like these kids that would, right before their bar mitzvah, when they would come out to be greeted by their family and friends, I would cut together this video of them playing basketball and like baseball, and I would add fire and flames to the videos, and like just like a Jay-Z soundtrack underneath of it, and just like they paid good money for that shit too. But it's like I wouldn't say yes to that now.
No.
But at the time, I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm making money, I'm paying off my debt. Like you're going to change and evolve over time. And like, don't ever, especially early on, if you're just getting started out, there's very few things that you're too good for.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's funny that you said that, because it resonates with me on when I first started becoming a writer in the health and fitness industry. I said yes to everything. I wrote for like the most obscure blogs on the planet that maybe got like 3 views. But what it taught me is that I learned how to do work on a deadline. I learned that I needed to produce, and I needed to set up some internal habits and some external practices. Like I had to like have things set up in a way where I could accomplish a task and make it replicable. Like I could do that over and over again. So like with your intros to bar mitzvah with flames and stuff like that, right? Like you may look back at that and be like, man, I would never do that again, or I would do it differently. But at the time, you were doing your best work that you were capable of, and you were doing it on a deadline for money, which is amazing, because then you just get your reps in. You just keep doing more of it and more of it, and you get more discerning, you get better at what you do. And then you look back at it and you're like, that was a necessary stepping stone, but it's not something that I would do again. But you don't knock it either, because someone that's going to be an up and coming filmmaker, maybe they need to corner the market on like the Jewish bar mitzvah opening credits or whatever intro video.
Yeah.
But everyone starts somewhere. And if you're still doing the same stuff like 5-10 years into your career as when you started, like my thought on that is like, unless you really love it and you just like for some reason you nailed it the first time you tried something and that's just what you're good at now and that's just what you want to do. I feel like if you're doing the same stuff 5 to 10 years later and you're not doing better versions of that, you may need to like look at things and go, you know, what am I holding myself back by just doing the same thing? Like there should be some kind of growth.
When you look at your current life, what you're doing now, and you kind of trace it back to the beginning, what was the first domino that kind of started everything?
All right. Yeah, all right. So I have a couple of answers that come to mind, and I haven't thought about this in a while. The first one is, I think, my parents putting me into martial arts when I was 5. Because what it did is it gave me a daily practice, like a thing, and I was committed to something. I mean, I had no choice. I was 5. My parents could tell me to do whatever the fuck, and I had to go do it, right? You have no say in the matter. But I think my parents putting me into martial arts when I was so young taught me like respect and discipline and how to listen and how to push myself and how to overcome challenges and how to have accomplishments, like, because there's a belt system, right? Like you go from white belt to yellow belt to all the way up to black belt, and you earn that. It's not just like someone gives you a certificate and says good job. Like you have to do things in order to have an achievement, and it feels really rewarding. So I think that was a big one. The second one, I was in a Barnes & Noble bookstore a couple weeks ago, and you know when you first walk into a Barnes & Noble and there's like the 2 doors. There's like the door from the outside, and then there's like this little hallway, and then there's a door to the inside of the store. And they always put these like shit books out in like the little hallway area. They're like $7.99 books about random things. I went into a Barnes & Noble a couple weeks ago, and in that little area, I saw Stephen Covey. He wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. His son wrote a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens. And I hadn't thought about that book in like 2 decades, but I read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens back when I was like 11 or 12, and it changed my entire life because it was like a self-development book for 11-year-olds.
Wow.
Yeah, and I totally forgot about it. I had no idea, but then I like picked it up and flipped through it, and I was like, oh man, there's like some good life lessons in here about like how to push yourself to gain knowledge and how to say no to things that don't seem right to you. Just like all these little life lessons at like 11 and 12 years old that you may not be getting from other sources. Like I got it from this like random book that I'm not even sure how I got it. Like I don't think my parents gave me this book and were like, hey, I think you're going to learn something from it. I may have found it like in the school library. But that book, I think that book helped a lot. And I think the first domino after I don't know if it's the 3rd domino by now, but I think it was gaining that 30, 40 pounds back when I was like 16 and 17. Because at that point, like I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I didn't have any career prospects. I wrote really terrible poetry to girls I was trying to impress. So that was like my extent of writing. And that just triggered something in me where I was like, man, if I can do this, what else can I do with my life? Because I took this body that I have and I manipulated it in a way that's really positive, and it felt really, really good. And I want to know what that's like in other areas of my life. Maybe I don't have to be a fuck up, you know?
How did you turn it into a career, the fitness and the health and the writing?
Yeah. So I started as a fitness assistant at a local health club. So I got a job making like minimum wage, wiping sweat off of cardio machines. And I got my personal training certification after that. And I started training just random clients. And at the same time, I also wanted to be a writer, but I didn't know what that meant. And so I had read a couple of health and fitness books, and one of them was written by a guy named Lou Schuler, and he was the fitness director of Men's Health magazine at the time. So this is probably like 2004, 2005. I'm just out of high school, and I did like a semester at community college, didn't know what I wanted to do, got this job as a fitness assistant. Kind of knew I wanted to do something with health and fitness because I just gained all this weight and it was cool, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do with it. And so I read this book by Lou, and I like Googled him, and I found his website, and he had like a contact form on it. So I was like, I'll just send Lou an email. Like, he'll write back. And my friends thought it was insane. They're like, there's a good dude that wrote a book that you just read, and you're going to email him? Like, he's never going to fucking talk to you. And so I sent Lou an email, and I basically just told him my story. I'm like, hey, I'm 18, and I'm a personal trainer, and I don't know what I want to do, but I think I want to be a writer. How do I get your job? And he wrote back to me, and it was amazing. And he basically told me, he's like, he was super kind. And he said, well, if you want to go to journalism school like I did, you need to go to Columbia or pick a good journalism school. And I'm like, dude, I graduated with a 1.7. There's no fucking way I'm getting into Columbia journalism school. And he's like, if you want to, go into health and fitness, maybe get like an exercise physiology degree. And I'm like, yeah, it's not going to happen either. But there was one line in the email that he may have written as an afterthought, but he said, but at some point, it doesn't matter what you do because your experience and your connections will speak for themselves. And I was like, a light bulb went off, and I was like, oh shit. So if it doesn't matter, just eventually my experience and my connections will be like the things that I need to like open new doors. I should just go find ways to get experience and connections. So that's when I was like, okay, I'm going to get my personal training certification, and I'm going to just start training clients. Like, even like, I know I'm not going to hurt them, but I may not know the best stuff to do at either. I'm just going to like work on it on the fly. I'm just going to like learn as I go. And the same thing with writing. I'm just going to start writing a blog. So like, I started a blog, and I'm like, if I can just write every day, hopefully I'll get better at writing, and then maybe I can do some magazine stuff. And I just started doing that kind of stuff every day, training clients, writing articles for myself that no one else would read, and then making connections with people. I took out a $1,200 loan to fly to a conference or seminar in Washington, D.C. that was put on by this like bodybuilding magazine that I read and respected. And I met people there that fast-tracked my career because I was like this young up-and-coming trainer guy, and I was super ambitious and excited. And when they told me to do something, I would go and do it, and then I'd report back to them with what happened. So I just found a way to get experience and connections without having to go the traditional way of going through school. There wasn't a master plan to it. I just did what felt right and like used the limitations to my advantage. Like, I couldn't go to school. So if I can't go to college, if it's not really a thing I can do, how can I go and get the experience and connections another way?
Currently, is a lot of your work, does it come through online? Like, does your business mostly run online, or is it mostly in person?
Mostly online at this point. Yeah.
So I'm curious about that. I mean, it's funny because like just years ago, you remember seeing like make a living like online, but now it's just so everybody knows, it's pretty synonymous. It's pretty easy, and it's not sleazy at all.
Yes.
How has it changed over the years? And like, What was the difference of trying to make a living online, say when you started, maybe 2008 to 10 versus today?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Like, we're finally at a point where my parents actually understand what I do for a living now.
Right, that's
like,
good.
Like the first few years, they're like, I have no idea how you make money. Are you sure like this is safe and legal and everything?
Right. Right, because like our parents were like, don't put your name on the internet.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
right.
Scared of everything.
You get an email, don't open it. Could be a virus.
Right.
So, I mean, I started my career training people in person, right? So I had a personal training studio for a while. And so I did that for a good 5 or 6 years. So that was, and at the same time, I was starting the online stuff. So I was starting to write for some magazines. I had my blog. And I think the transition really happened, I think it was like 2007, 2008, when I was doing online coaching for the first time. Like that was a weird new thing where instead of training people in person, I could write their programs and talk to them on, I think Skype existed back then. I could talk to them on Skype or on the phone, and I could use PayPal and they'd pay me money. So I was charging like a couple $100s a month to talk to these guys on the phone a couple times a month and write up their training programs and coach them through it. And I had like 10 or 15 clients paying me $200 a month. And I lived in rural Montana. It was suddenly a living, right? The first product I ever put out was, it's funny to think about this now, but it was an interview product. Like I went and talked, it was called Standing on the Shoulders of Giants. And it was an information product. Like it's like everyone, at this point knows what an ebook is or whatever. But it was literally CDs of me talking to health and fitness experts, talking about how to be successful in the health and fitness industry. And I sold it for like $50. And now podcasts and stuff are free. Like you can sell an interview product, but back in 2006, 2007, you totally could. So just early on, I learned, I can create things of value and sell them to people and feel really good about it because I'm adding value to their life and the price makes sense. So that was all very new back then to me. Online coaching, writing articles for magazines or blogs, and then creating products. Now, most of what I do for income generation, it's all online, but it's still consulting, right? So it's online, but I still meet people in person. I could go to Toronto to work with the Precision Nutrition team in person and have meetings. But I think the way it's changed online now is I think everything is easier and harder at the same time. I feel like it's easier because you have, like, if you want to start an online business or just a business, you don't have to call it an online business anymore. You can just say, I have a business. Doesn't matter if it's online. Right? You used to say, I have an online business.
Right.
It's
and it
totally
wasn't as
now.
legitimate as like if you had an actual storefront.
No, absolutely. So like I had an online business, but I think what happened for me is I had this realization that I could create value for people and then charge money for it. And that's still what I do now, right? It's just gotten better. So starting a business is both easier and harder because you can be up and running in like 3 hours. If you have like a Stripe account or a PayPal account to get paid, you can use something like Strikingly or Squarespace or something to have a website that looks good and it like looks good on mobile. Like you can basically get to the point where you have a business within a couple of hours if you have something of value to sell to people, right? But so that's the easy part. I mean, back when I first started, I had to get like a merchant bank account, like to even accept online payments at the time, because it was so weird. Like people were like, how do you make money? It all comes through the internet. I don't trust that. We're going to hold your money and not deposit it into your bank account until it actually clears from all these random people that are paying you. So that's the easy part now. But the hard part is that there's so much noise. There's so much, everyone wants to be like a lifestyle entrepreneur, blogger, 4-hour work week kind of thing. And I feel like it's a lot harder to kind of break in if you're not being original and if you're not consistent with it. Like I don't know if I would be able to do what I do now if I just started right now. Like I think I'd figure it out, but I don't think it would have. Like when I started my blog in 2006, I was like one of the first fitness/lifestyle blogs on the internet at the time, at least written by like a young guy, right? And that kind of legacy content, like the fact that happened like 11 years ago or 12 years ago now, I find like I think it was easier back then to break in because there was a lot less noise.
Yeah, I think you're completely right. There was, being an early adopter is one of the biggest advantages to building an audience because it's less reliant on quality, and you're going to get better. As you continue to produce, eventually you're going to get better, but your audience is also growing. The trouble today is if you're producing not good quality content, if you're making shit, you're not going to get any followers. You're only going to get them once you start to make good stuff. But I think what you said was like being original and consistent. I think those are like the two most important things. If you kind of approach it in an original way, you have a different spin on it. Like minimalism, there's tons of minimalism blogs out there. There's so many people talking about it.
Yep.
What can you bring to the table, to that conversation that's different, And it's usually going to be based a little bit around your personality, because everybody's individual personality is what separates them. I was talking to a comedian yesterday. We were talking about stealing jokes, and he's like, you're never going to steal a joke if you're speaking from your own personal experience.
Yes.
It's not like somebody can take your stories that happened to you. I mean, certainly, I guess they could, but like, it'd be very easy to call somebody out on that. You're like, that came from my life. The thing I think you do very well is how you present yourself online. Like, you go to your site, it's very well thought out. Like, the photos are beautiful, but then it's like, it's just easy to understand what you do and the value that's provided there.
Thank you.
What advice would you give to people who are like, that's such an important thing, like how to present yourself online?
Yeah. So I think one of the best compliments that the compliment that means the most to me now is when I meet some of my readers for the first time, and I have like a coffee with them, or I just talk to them for a little bit, and they say, "Man, you're like talking with you is exactly what it's like to get your emails. Like, you're the same person." And I feel like that's really important to me. So like, my advice, I mean, it's tough to give advice, right? But like, what I do, a couple of things. I always write how I speak. So this is like the way I'm talking right now is the way I try to write an email. Now, obviously, I edit the email. All right, it's not just stream of consciousness. But I feel like I want to have a conversation with people. Like, I don't want to necessarily be seen as an expert. Like, I don't want to be seen as an expert. Like, I know all of the things, and I will teach you all of the things that I know, because I don't fucking know all of the things. I know a little small amount of things that I feel like I'm pretty good at. I want to be like, the way that I treat my website and like the way that I try to write to my audience is like, I want to be the helpful person, kind of maybe older brother type or friend that like we've been friends for a long time, and I've figured out some shit that's worked really well in my life, and I want to tell you about it and see if it can help you out too, and maybe you can teach me some things at the same time. So it's a conversation. So that's the way that I approach my newsletter and my blog, is very much like a friend that maybe we see each other a couple of times a year, or we talk on the phone once a month or so. But it's like, let's skip the small talk and get straight to like the good stuff. Like, let's talk about life. Like, I don't want to talk about the weather or whatever. So that's the first thing that I do. And the second thing, and this hasn't really been a conscious decision, but I can see that like, when everyone else when I see the industry going a certain kind of way, I try to go the opposite direction. I'll give you a very clear example. It's very specific, but affiliate marketing used to be a big thing, and it still is. So basically, if you have a product that you sell online, you get affiliates, other people that will promote your product in exchange for a commission, right? So if I have a workout program I sell and you are my affiliate, and the workout program is $100, maybe I give you $25 or $50 for every person that comes through your audience that buys my thing, right? So I back in 2010, 11, I played with that for a while because that's what everyone else was doing, and it was brand new to me. I didn't know any better at that point. And what happened though is pretty quickly you get, sorry for the term, but you get pretty quickly into this circle jerk of just
I'm glad you use that word.
Yeah, okay. Just like people, they're like, if you do my thing, I'll do your thing, and if I do your thing, you'll do my thing, right? Yeah. And it just becomes this like, it's not genuine, and people started promoting products that they'd never tested, and people were like spending more time on the marketing of things than they were on the creation of the actual thing they were selling. And I just saw this change happen around that time, where a lot of people in my specific industry, so like the fitness and nutrition lifestyle industry, primarily online, started doing more and more affiliate promotions, and they would put way more emphasis on that than on the quality of the thing they were selling. And it just didn't sit right with me. And so I just fucking stopped doing it, and I actively went the other direction, where I'm not going to do any affiliate stuff. Like, I just want to talk to my audience and try to bring new people in. And if I like want to connect with someone in my field, like, I don't have to have like a transactional relationship with them in terms of like money to be their friend. Like, if I like Matt's stuff, I'm just going to tell my audience about Matt's stuff with no expectation that it's going to come back to me in any way, because I think I love my audience, and they trust me, and I want to tell them about stuff that makes my life better, right?
I think that the scale is still tipped in that direction, and where so many sponsored posts. You see it all the time.
Yes.
And I'm like, it's sometimes hard, a hashtag ad. And it's like, people do it so much. If you're 50% of your posts are sponsored, or there's always something that you're selling, you're always asking your audience for something, then I feel like that's a problem. It
is a problem, because the trust kind of degrades over time, right? And I think it's always good. I just said something. I remember writing a blog post back in like 2012, and it was called something like 5 foods I'll never eat again. And one of them was bread. That's fucking stupid. But at that time, I was like, carbohydrates are terrible and you shouldn't eat bread. And so I wrote this post, and it was ridiculous to write a post like that. But at the time, like, it seemed like a good thing. So I just said, like, I'll never do affiliate marketing. I will say that I'm always open to changing my mind, but only if it makes sense and only if it feels good. So like, some of the podcasts, like I listen to Sam Harris's podcast, and I listen to the Minimalist podcast, and these podcasts don't have sponsors. They're self-supporting, right? Maybe they have a Patreon page, or they have like listener supported, whatever. I really value those podcasts because I feel like I'm always getting their best. They're not like shilling for underwear or whatever, right?
Yeah, or a mattress.
Yeah, and I'm gonna say there's nothing wrong with that, but I still feel like there's something wrong with that. I don't know. Like it doesn't fit my personality and what I want to accomplish. But I'm also open to the idea that maybe a product or a service comes along that just makes the most sense for me in my life, and I think my audience would love it too. And maybe then I'm open to the idea of it. But right now, I can't see that happening.
Right. Like, I definitely see there are certain digital products that I use that help me a lot with my business that I love to use. And, like, the experience with them has been amazing. So for me, when I think about it, I'm like, well, what would be, if I'm going to mention that anyway, like, what would be wrong about starting the podcast and having it be sponsored by them? You know, it's a challenging thing to enter, because I kind of want my podcast to feel like it's, well, these are just conversations. And like, imagine if you were sitting down with a friend for coffee, and you're like, before you do it, before we, get into our talk, let me tell you about this mattress that I just bought.
This conversation sponsored by Casper.
Right. Like, it feels a little bit off, and that's just, it's kind of polluted our culture now. Yeah. Just advertising is everywhere.
Absolutely.
I get it. I think it's like when people are spending so much time on creating content, and they that's what they are. Like, they're all, like, every day they're content creators. They're putting out amazing quality stuff. It takes extra effort to be able to monetize that in a way that makes sense to them, and that would be just as lucrative, or at least lucrative enough to make a living and support their business, than it would be to just throw up a couple 60-second ads.
This is one thing that, like, I don't think I've talked about this a lot in any of my blog posts or anything, but like, I get asked a lot, like, how, like, from people that want to start a business on, online or whatever. They want to create fitness products, or they have an idea for a like a bag they want to create, or like a certain kind of like physical good. And my advice to them is always kind of the same, and it's, one, start with a small test, like just see if you actually want to do the thing. but it's also like find a way to charge a high dollar amount for a service to start with. I feel really grateful that I was able to start my career as a personal trainer, because I got to get a lot of repetitions in getting paid to learn by helping these people get in shape and learn what worked and what didn't. And the fact that I was able to do that in person with people and then eventually online, talking to them on the phone and writing their programs, that helped. Like any workout program or thing that I sell now that like is not a direct like connection with me, which I don't do that often, has been influenced by my like the services that I offered early in my career. I didn't just go straight to the product and then try to sell the thing. And so I feel like people that are just starting out, if there's a way to develop a service out of the thing that you think you want to sell, I always recommend starting with that, because it's easier to do consulting or coaching or to teach someone something for a higher dollar amount than it is to like create an information product for $100 and try to sell it to no one.
Yeah, which is based upon an audience. It's like those are the things that come in time.
Yeah, and I think it was Tim Ferriss, podcaster, author, that said something like, I think for his podcast, he waited, I'm gonna have the number fucked up, but I think he waited until he had like 100,000 downloads of his podcast before he even started like doing the advertising.
Yeah,
right?
I actually I was listening to a podcast where he mentioned that advice, and he said wait until you get 100,000 downloads, and I was like, great, I've got over 100,000 downloads. And then he said per episode, and I was like, oh, all right. I got a little bit of time to go before that.
Well, and even that though, right? Like it's all, they're good baselines, and it means you could do it at 10,000 downloads per whatever, right? It's probably unique to the audience. But I think those are good like base measures to put in there. Like how can you just get really good at what you do? There's another guy, Ramit Sethi.
Yeah, he's great.
Okay, yeah. So my partner Rochelle used to work for Growth Lab, which is a company that he runs, and she was a product developer there. Super smart person. And so anyway, so like she knew Ramit, and then I got to have coffee with Ramit a couple weeks ago. And what I love about what he does is he is so into the customer research aspect of things that everything that they create at Growth Lab is fully tested on real people over the course of a long time. And so they're never just putting out stuff to put out something to try to make money off of it. Like if it's going to be out there on the market, it's something that was tried and tested a long time beforehand, right? And so I just love that approach to things. And so the thing that I got from Ramit and other people that I respect, that I consider friends in this kind of industry now, is like, how can you just do high quality work? I mean, Ramit told me that I think he wrote a blog post about this, but like he was on stage at a speaking event early in his career, and there was he gave this talk and he loved it. He's like, oh, I can make money like speaking in front of people on stage. I should do that. And so he asked another person who had a lot more experience, who was like super famous in that industry. He's like, hey, how do I get more speaking engagements? And the guy said, hey, go do interesting shit first. Like, right. You have to have something to talk about. You have to go do interesting things in your life and help people and add value before you can ever ask someone for money to like stand up in front of them and to talk to them about things.
Yeah, I think about that when I look back over the past 15 years of being a filmmaker, the past 10 to 15 years. I just think now when I talk about it, I have so many things that I can bring up, so many learning lessons that I've had. And if I tried to 2 years in, try to do what I'm doing now, it wouldn't be successful, and I wouldn't have anything to talk about because I have no experience.
Yes.
Like you gotta get your hands dirty.
Yeah, you got to go do things before you can write about things or sell things. You know what I mean?
Or else you're just faking it. And like, there's an element to faking it till you make it. But I think that it's going to be way more challenging. It's so much, it comes more naturally when it actually happens.
And I think fake it till you make it is good in the sense that like if you don't feel confident or you feel like you're kind of an imposter, like I had like imposter syndrome when I was first starting out, right? I was like 22 and I had this book come out and like I didn't go to college. Who the fuck am I to like write a workout book? And this friend of mine, John Berardi, said, he's like, what do you need to know more than? You need to know more than the people that you're trying to help. So as long as you know more than 19-year-old dudes who need to gain weight, you can help them. Like you're not an imposter, you know? And so I feel like the fake it till you make it is good when it's like, I don't really feel confident in myself, but it's not good if you're just faking your life. Like, I'm fake it till you make it. Like I don't really know how to do this shit, but I'll say that I do.
Right. Like you're not trying to fly a plane.
Yeah. No shit.
Cool, man. Let's do, I got some questions from Instagram. I reached out and just crazy response. Do you do Instagram or no? I didn't see you on there.
No. We talked about this earlier, right? Before we started recording, like I have to have a good reason to do things. And because I work online, I want to minimize the amount of time that I'm on a device because like I do my work on a laptop or on my desktop. And so I don't like, we can get into this a little bit later,
Sure.
You know, after your questions if you want to, but I'm really weird with my phone. Like my girlfriend knows my password to my phone, but I don't. Like I can.
Do you do that on purpose?
Yes.
It's by design.
We've learned to say this, that it's like totally consensual and like I actually ask for this to happen. It's not like a weird power dynamic, but like right. So we've told people this and they think that we're terrible people and like have a horrible relationship. I'm like no.
She won't let me.
No, she won't let me on my phone. But like I know how to get into my phone to like do shit, but she knows the restrictions. Like you go into restrictions on an iPhone and you can like put in a passcode to like turn on the internet or turn off certain apps or whatever. I don't know that password because the reason is I call it nuclear mode. So like I want to be in a position where I make one decision that by virtue of making that one decision makes a bunch of decisions down the line that I don't have to use willpower. So on my phone, I don't have email, social media, anything like that. I use my phone for text, calling, Google Maps, Spotify, a few other apps that I use, and that's it. So she knows my password. So I don't have Instagram because I had it for a little while and literally all I would do like at night was just like scroll and look through things. So for some people, like I have a friend that has a lot of followers and he loves it because he's a trainer up in West Hollywood and he has like 15-minute breaks between clients. He's like, I'm not going to do anything productive in those 15 minutes. So I get to like connect with people on Instagram and like follow my friends and post something cool and valuable. So for him, I think it makes a lot of sense. But for me, like I don't have a good fucking reason to do it. It would just detract from my life because I would compare myself to other people who are like more successful than me. And then I would like post a thing and be like, how many likes did it get?
Yeah. Do you call that the nuclear option?
Yeah.
I love that.
Nuclear mode on the phone.
Nuclear mode. That's so good.
Yeah.
Because I've done a couple videos on that and just ways in which we can restrict our phone use. And I haven't even thought of that option where if you have a partner to have, because there's certain things that we like about it. There's even a phone, I think it's called Light Phone. And I had talked to the founder. I'm trying to schedule some time to get him on the podcast, but it's like, it's a beautifully designed, like small rectangular phone that it syncs up with this phone. But like you don't have to bring it with you. But basically, that's cell phone service, so you can do calls and text. But it's
cool.
super basic. That way, you can just leave this at home, and then if you need to get a hold of people, you can still do it from this additional phone.
That's super.
It's pretty cool.
So I'm not a Luddite, right? Like I love technology and the fact that I can that it's enabled me to make a living. I just know my own limitations and I know that I can get a little obsessive about things. So I just try to actively put myself in situations where I'm not gonna like fuck up. And so for me that means like when I went to New York recently, I had Rochelle like put the internet back on my phone and my email, right? Because I was like, oh, like if I'm gonna meet with these editors for these magazines or whatever, I need to be able to like see when they emailed me because I don't have their phone numbers. And I swear, man, like I was like in my hotel room at like 1 a.m. like refreshing my email and reading articles that no one needs to read.
Dude, we're Neanderthals.
Yeah,
like we have no control over ourselves.
Exactly. So nuclear mode is I can't do it. Like if it's not on my phone, I can't do it. So like, what am I gonna do at night? I'm gonna go to sleep. I'm gonna read a book.
Yeah, dude, same thing. I mean, the apps are designed to pull you in.
Absolutely.
And it's we're not strong enough.
No,
you have to do something like that.
Yeah. All right. So let's get to the questions thing. Cool. I didn't want to.
Yeah, we got a few questions here.
That.
This is a lot of them on health and wellness. Somebody said, "How do I lose the last layer of fat? I've been struggling with it for nearly a decade."
So questions like this are always interesting, right? Because like, okay, so without knowing anything about this person, I will say that there is no like magic thing that you do to lose the last layer of fat. It's all like habits that you put into your life, like months and years beforehand. But I will also say that there's like, when I get a question like this, and I get it quite a bit, I have to know a little bit more about the person, because sometimes people need to lose that last little bit of fat because they're like pro bodybuilders or figure competitors, and they like, or actresses, and they need to like look amazing for a very specific amount of time. And so in that case, then you do little things that you would never recommend to someone do for like health reasons, right? Like I did this experiment a few years ago where I don't recommend it to anybody, but I gained 20 pounds in 28 days, lost it all in 7 days, and then gained it all back in 24 hours. And
Jesus Christ.
Dude,
was this the one that was on Tim Ferriss's blog?
Yeah. So I wrote a guest post. I did a 2-part thing on Tim's blog about this. It was a full-time job, man. But and the goal was like, I worked with a couple of people that train mixed martial artists, right? Like a nutritionist, John Barreri, that trains like George St. Pierre and all these like big name MMA fighters. And then I worked with the trainer, Martin Rooney, who trains a lot of these guys. And we just thought it'd be kind of a fun experiment, right? Like what would happen, like what a lot of people don't understand about like mixed martial arts is, and wrestling, is that people need to lose weight fast, because what happens is if you and I weigh 170 pounds and we're gonna fight in the 150 pound weight class though. So even though we weigh 170, we're gonna fight in the 150. And the way that we do that is we strategically manipulate our body weight leading up to the weigh-in the night before the fight. And so we get down to 150 in like a week by using water manipulation. So just like dehydration techniques and sitting in a sauna, like really unhealthy shit. But you get down to 150, you weigh in, and then you have 24 hours to get back up to 170. It's insane. That's
got to do some damage to your body.
Yes, but for short periods of time, it's like your body can handle it, but it's not like we wrote on the article for Tim's site, like, do not do this. And it's tough because like people want to do it anyway. Yeah. And it's tough, but we were interested in seeing like, is it possible to do this? And if it is, how much damage does it how much damage does it do to like your physical body? Meaning like, are you still like, after you lost 20 pounds, then gained it back in 24 hours, are you still as strong as you were beforehand? Are you still as powerful? Like, it matters to MMA fighters. So anyway, I say that because the question, like, how do I lose the last layer of fat, is like, it depends on what you're trying to do. Because the thing that I would have you do if you were like an actor and you needed to like get in shape for like a script reading or whatever, where you're gonna go and do an audition and you need to look a certain way, will be totally different than the person who needs to or wants to be in shape for like the rest of their life. Here's what I'd recommend for this person, and for anyone that needs to lose like the last layer of fat or whatever it needs to be, is look at your life and like take a journal, like just get like a Moleskine notebook or a note card, or use the note app on your phone, and just for the next couple of days, just kind of like do like a time diary. Just what are you doing throughout the day? Like, when are you eating meals? What kind of things are you eating? When are you going to sleep? And what you'll find is after you do that for a couple of days, you can look back at the data you've collected on your own life, and you will find little things that you can manipulate and change that will, like, maybe every morning you make yourself like a smoothie and you put a lot of fruit and protein powder and almond milk and all this stuff in it, right? And maybe you do that every morning and you think it's healthy. And I generally say it is. But maybe you're putting in like way more fruit than you need and way more yogurt and stuff. And you could like cut 200 calories out of that one shake. And if you were to do that one little thing, that may be enough to get you where you need to be. So, but what I'm not doing here is just saying you should do X, Y, Z, right? Like that's the expert talking down to the people. And what I would try to do is like co-create with that person. How can that person collect data on their own life? And then if they needed a coach, someone that knew what they were doing to look over it and give suggestions and modifications, that's when that's important.
Yeah, because it's so specific. I mean, there could be so many different ways to solve that problem.
Maybe this person has like hormonal imbalances, right? Like it could like to the point where like they're just storing more fat because of something.
Right. Here's a question. My question for Nate is, how do you balance physical exercise with stress to avoid overtraining and injuries? And I think that's interesting because like part of your story was like being, what'd you say, you were a reformed fitness guy?
Recovering fitness junkie.
Right. And like that's a real thing. It's like when you get into it, you just are obsessed about every little gram of food that you eat and measuring everything. So I think that probably plays a little bit of a role in the overtraining and overdoing it.
Absolutely. I feel like, well, so I reached a point where like, I'm still kind of agnostic to whether or not this is true. Like I wonder if like people need a period of kind of being crazy to accomplish a task, right? Like I'm assuming when you first got into like making films, like you were maybe a little obsessive about it. Maybe it's all you thought about. Maybe it's all you did. Maybe you were like studying other people's films, like, and you were just so into it, right? And you can still kind of be that way now, but you may have also backed off a little bit. So for me in my health and fitness, I was like drinking shots of olive oil and eating 3 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches before I went to bed. Like I don't do that in my life now. But I had to go to this point where like I was really into it. I dove deep into it and I learned a lot. And then through that process, I learned what's important and what's not important. So the first thing that I would look at in terms of like training, but then like the stress of everyday life is the best way I've heard it put. And I don't remember where I heard this, but imagine a bathtub. And imagine instead of one faucet coming into the bathtub, there's like 6 faucets around the bathtub, right? So there's multiple places where the water's coming in. And let's say that is all like the bathtub represents you, and then the water coming in is stress, right? You need to keep it at a certain level where it's a good balance. When some part of your life becomes more stressful and there's more water coming out of it, you need to go down and like turn down the other faucets in your life to make sure that not as much water is still coming out of them. So meaning like if you are working on a project and you have a relationship with your partner that is in a rough spot, maybe one of the worst things to do at that point is to throw yourself into the gym, because you have so many other stresses going on in your life that you need to take control of the things that you have control over, which is how often you work out and what you do. Maybe instead of going to the gym 4 days a week and crushing weight training and strength training, maybe you do a couple days of yoga and 1 day of strength training. Like these are the things that you have control over, that if everything else in your life or other things in your life are really stressing you out, you have control over how much work you do to your body. Because like what people don't understand, but the person that asked this question seems to, is that you actually aren't building muscle or losing fat or doing amazing stuff to your body while you're working out. You're breaking your muscles down. Like when you're lifting weights, you're making micro tears in your muscles and they need to get built back up. So if you're always crushing yourself in the gym with cardio, with strength training, and you don't have that proper recovery time where you're getting enough sleep, where you're eating enough food, where you aren't stressed out all the time, you're not going to get in better shape. Right? Like you're not gonna gain muscle. You're not gonna do the things that you think you're doing in the gym. That stuff only happens when you take enough proper rest and recovery time. But if the rest of your life is stressful to the point where you can't have that rest and recovery time, you need to scale back what you're doing in the gym. And it doesn't always have to be like that. Like hopefully things will become less stressful at work or with your relationship or whatever it's going to be, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's right. It's really about asking the right questions and setting your priorities.
Yes.
Because, and it's a constant balancing act, like you said. Like
Yes.
you have to consistently be taking a look at where you're spending your time and where your stress is. Let me check out another question here from Instagram. Ooh, this is a good one. So creatine and whey protein, I would love to know a little bit more about their risks, benefits, and when and how to take them. These are two, this is me speaking now. That was Alberto. But yeah, because I've used both in the past. Currently don't use any. But yeah, I especially with the creatine one, because like there's a lot of sugar that goes along with absorbing those into the body.
Your body like produces creatine too, or like creatine is found in like meat and things like that too, right? So it's not like this crazy supplement that no one's ever heard of. So me personally, I don't really take that many supplements right now. Like I take like a fish oil and maybe a multivitamin. That's about it. But creatine and whey protein are great. Creatine, I'm pretty sure, is the most studied sports supplement of all time. Like there's so many studies showing how beneficial it is, not just like physically, but mentally. Like I don't understand the science behind it. I'm not going to play like I do, but for like brain function, it's supposed to be really, really helpful and supportive too. I think even for like memory and everything. So with creatine specifically, creatine monohydrate, find the highest quality you can get. It'll cost you $20 for a small little container of it. It's powderless, or it's tasteless, just like a white powder. When I take it, there's like a loading phase where you can like load up and do like 20 grams over the course of 5 days, and then you go to maintenance mode and all that stuff. I would just treat it like a daily supplement, and I would just maybe cycle on and off of it, where I would do like a month or two taking creatine every day and then take a couple of weeks off. But it's like the most benign in terms of like, I'm not worried about the adverse health effects whatsoever of creatine, but the benefits are there too.
The one problem that I've found is that there are, I mean, because there's so many supplements, and I think I've done the ones that are just strictly creatine, and I haven't felt like I've noticed an improvement in my workouts, but I haven't noticed a negative, and I haven't noticed a negative impact. But then there's also like the big jugs that are sugary, and like, I've heard that like, and maybe I misread some info online, but like you need to be taking it with, what is it called? Like not glucose or whatever, like where you need to be taking it with tons of dextrose, sugar. So, you need to take 30 grams of sugar with each thing. And then it's like, I feel like shit when I take those. I'm like shaking.
No, and what I used to do is I'd like mix it in grape juice, right? Because I'd do the same thing. I take the flavorless powder and put it in grape juice. I feel like everyone watching this probably knows like the 80-20 rule, or Parato's principle, right? So it's like 20% of the things that you focus on will lead to 80% of the results. I feel like when you're getting to the point of like exactly how many milligrams of a certain thing and how many, like what you need to pair it with exactly, I feel like at that point we're just splitting hairs, because people will not do a thing that they know is good for them because they're not doing it perfectly. If you were just to take, like, I don't even think you need creatine, but if you wanted to take creatine, which I think is a good supplement, and I've taken at various times of my like training career, if you wanted to take it, just don't do anything fancy. Just take a teaspoon, put it in water, stir it up in the morning, and slam it. You're good. Like that's like the most of like health and fitness is a really interesting area, because people, there's so many different ways to hack this and hack that people focus on like the minutia of the shit, while at the same time like they're worried about their creatine but they're sleeping 5 hours a night, or they're worried about what supplement to take, or like what specific, should I do like a ketogenic diet or should I do this, while they're like slamming 4 cups of coffee and have a terrible relationship with their wife. And you know what I mean? It's like, get your priorities straight. Like, not saying that this person doesn't have their priorities straight,
but
like,
this is very common.
So many people are just focused on like, what is the one little thing, like what piece of advice? And I'm like, you don't need that. You just need to like focus on the basics and just do them well consistently. And that'll lead to way more like better results than worrying about like what sleep supplement or sports supplement should I take.
Right. This might be a very similar answer, but I think it's important to ask. Let me see, what's this person's name? Lion. His name is Lion.
If that's his actual name, it's pretty amazing.
Lion Stark.
Yes.
That can't be a real name.
No.
He made that shit up. This is Unstuck from Berlin. He's a photographer. But his question here, I think it kind of cues to the balance and a little bit of like cheating and where can we kind of bend the rules that we set for ourselves in terms of our diet. But he said, my question is it okay to drink soft drinks once or twice a week if you want to become slimmer? I only drink water at the moment, but I really want to drink something sweet sometimes. Thanks a lot. Can he drink some soda every once in a while?
Absolutely. Here's the thing with this, man. Because I'm in the health and fitness field, what happens is sometimes I'll meet up with people for a meal, right? Or I'm at a conference and then people at the conference will all get together and we'll sit down and have a meal together. And everyone always says like, oh, meeting with Nate, can't eat the bread, can't do the whatever. Meanwhile, I'm having like an amazing IPA and a burger. Right?
Yeah, they're like, what?
Yeah. Basically, this is your life and you're gonna die, right? So I don't think the reason I say that is like, for me, it's like a mantra I say to myself, because I'm like, I'm going to die. Not that I need to go chase pleasure, but like, I don't need to make my life. So like, if I really want something sweet to drink, I'm not going to just ban it forever. Like, I think that's a terrible way to live. So I'm going to do like, this is the 80-20 thing. Like most of the time I'm going to eat high quality food. I'm going to get enough sleep. I'm going to move my body a couple times a week and do some strength training and some flexibility and some cardio stuff. And I'm just going to focus on doing those things consistently. And if we're going to open a bottle of wine tonight, I'm going to have a couple glasses of wine. And if Lion wants a Pepsi every now and then and he's drinking mostly water, I see no problem with having a Pepsi every now and then. I'm definitely not one of those dogmatic like coaches or trainers that's like, you should never do this, because that's bullshit. It's setting people up to fail, because as soon as you tell someone not to do a thing, what do they want to do? They want to do that thing. So if we're taking a look at like a health and fitness plan or anything, it's like, okay, what I would we talked about nuclear mode with my phone, right? So maybe one thing is like, keep the soft drinks out of the house. That way you're not tempted to drink them. So like the first rule is like, go through your house and anything that's like terrible for you or that you don't want to drink all the time or drink or eat all the time, just get it out of the house, and then make it like a thing you look forward to. Like I have a Pepsi when I'm out with my friends at the movies or whatever. Like it becomes a reward at that point, and it becomes like a thing that like you're not trying to keep yourself from doing. It just becomes the thing that's like a little bit less important than other things in your life.
That's great advice. And that's a good point to go to a couple final questions. These are just like quick questions that I ask on most podcast episodes.
Cool.
And then we will end the podcast. So if you could go back to, say, high school, that age, or maybe when you're just starting out with the blog and the online business, what would you do differently looking back?
You know what? Here's what I would say. This is a weird way of answering this, but if I could go back to like right after high school, where I was just starting to like make a little bit of money doing personal training, I wouldn't change anything about my career trajectory. That's a tough word to say. Career path.
There you go.
Yeah, thanks. I wouldn't change anything about that, but what I would do is I'd go back to like 21-year-old me and be like, hey, motherfucker, how about you put some money away in like a Roth IRA for a bit, because you're now starting to make some money. Like I grew up pretty poor, and I was like the one person in my circle of friends that like had made it, whatever that meant. Like I was 22 and making like a good living. I had a book in bookstores, and all my friends, like I was just like in my small Montana town, I was like the baller. I would just take everyone out to dinner. I would just do that. And I wasn't making like amazing amounts of money, but for someone like when all my friends were working at like FedEx, Kinko's, making $10 an hour, like I made way more than they did. So I just embraced that lifestyle, and I would buy a new Audi, like a new car, and I would do this. And if I could just go back to myself and be like, hey, put 20% of your gross income into a Roth IRA, and don't touch it, that would have like, things are good now, but I would be way better off than if I would have been doing that for the last 10 years.
Dude, if you just take for the first 5 years of your working career, say if you're making like $40,000 or whatever, if you take $5,000, if you have $5,000 to spare and you put that in a Roth IRA and let that just for 5 years and then stop, I don't know. I should have done the math, but like you will likely have millions or hundreds of thousands of dollars by the time that you retire. Like it's crazy how compound interest will grow, and like how I've gotten to a point now where I've been investing. I mean, probably for around that period of time, maybe about 6 years, ever since I paid off all my student loans. I have been just investing relentlessly every year. I try to max out if I can my Roth and then a 401k.
Yep.
And if I stop now, I'm still good. I actually don't need to contribute anymore, and I'd still have enough money to retire. And consider like if everything continues.
And considering what your lifestyle is going to be like and all that.
Right, and then you get an average 10% return or whatever. But that is so comforting to know. Oh man, like it's everything. It's safety. It's security. It just makes, and it allows you to take more risks in life.
I will say, and the one thing that you said too is, I think I still would have taken out the loans I took out, because like I took out like not a lot, like maybe 30 grand worth of loans to like start my own personal training studio after I transitioned from the health club into my own space. I think that was a necessary growing pain, because I like learned a lot about starting a business and having overhead and running a facility and all that. But yeah, if I could go back to like me out of high school, it would be pay off your debt really quickly. Don't buy a bunch of stupid shit you don't need to impress people that you don't like, and put 20% of your gross income into a Roth IRA.
That's the
fucking
best.
Done.
Dude, that's it right there. Shit, man, I really wish I started. It's hard though. I understand people are in debt and stuff, and like there may be a circumstance where if you're graduating with $100,000 in student loans,
you got to pay that.
The best thing would be to just pay that off. Yeah. But that is killer advice. We might have answered this one already, but like, what one piece of advice have you gotten in the past that continues to stick with you to this day?
Without getting too deep into like, you had Dan Harris on your podcast a while ago, and so without getting too deep into like meditation and Buddhism, I'm not a Buddhist, but like I've been reading a lot more books about meditation and mindfulness and everything, and I think it's not necessarily one specific piece of advice, but it's a thing that I've been practicing that I've gotten from multiple people. Like I've read multiple books and I've done meditation workshops and silent retreats and stuff like that, and I think the one thing that like, if I can just continue to remember the fact that one, I'm going to die, and that it just puts everything in perspective for me. Like if I'm really worried about doing a thing, thinking about the fact that I'm gonna die and I don't know what happens after death, probably nothing in my view, like everything else seems way less consequential, and at the same time more like, if I'm nervous to get on stage and speak in front of people, if I'm nervous to take on this new business venture, if I'm nervous to have this conversation with my partner about something difficult, remembering that I'm going to die just infuses that moment with this kind of clarity where I'm like, this both, it matters and it doesn't matter at the same time. So I can just like stop taking myself so seriously, and I can just like I don't have to suffer unnecessarily.
And last question.
Yep.
How should people connect with you online? Where can they go to find out more about Nate Green?
Yeah, apparently I don't have an Instagram.
No Instagram, no Twitter. Do you have a Twitter?
I have a Twitter.
There we go.
Yeah, it's Twitter / Nate Green, which is like the most cocky thing ever, because there's multiple Nate Greens.
Nate Green.
In front
you got
it.
it.
Yeah, that's the one I got. Really though, I read a newsletter. I call it weekly-ish, so like once a week-ish. Sometimes I go a couple of weeks without writing something, but if they go to nategreen.org, they can sign up for my email list. And if you sign up and you like it, hang out and read more of it. And if you send me an email, I'll usually respond to it eventually. And if you don't like it, then you can unsubscribe, and that's fine too.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for being a part of the show, man.
Yeah, thank you so much, Matt.
Thanks. And that's the podcast. Hope you enjoyed this one. Again, if you want to hear about this new course that I'm making, if you want to get notified when it goes live, head over to mattdiavella.com/newsletter and sign up for my email list. You'll actually also get access to a 20-minute film that I made about my personal story of getting unstuck. So you'll get that, and I will also notify you when this course goes live in about a month or so. Thanks so much for listening.